The scale of the corruption of the American electoral system is so vast that we have to break it down into several pieces and examine them one by one. And to begin, I'm going to take a fairly innocuous clip and deconstruct it so that you can see how this informational war is fought and how your vote is stolen without you even being aware of it. So, Exhibit 1. On November 8, 2020, ABC News chief anchor George Stephanopoulos interviewed Republican Governor Kristi Noem on ABC's This Week.
Governor Noem, thanks for joining us this morning. COVID is rising in your state as well. Cases are up, hospitalizations are up, deaths are up. Are you prepared to work with President-elect Biden to get it under control?
Okay, well, stop right there. The term president-elect has a specific legal definition defined by Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution, as well as the 12th and 20th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution, which calls for an election day to be held, quote, in each state on the Tuesday after the first Monday in November every fourth year. Now, in 2020, that was November 3rd. That is when the people of each state are polled, but the actual election of the president, legally defined, has always occurred on the Monday after the second Wednesday in December, when the various state electors convene in Washington to actually elect the president. In the year 2020, that's December 14th. Now, on that day, the candidate with 270 votes or more is elected president and becomes president-elect from that moment until the inauguration of the president on January 20th, unless January 20th should fall on a Sunday, in which case Inauguration Day becomes January 21st. Before the electors convene to vote, Joe Biden is not president-elect. Between now and December 14th, the specific constitutional term for Joe Biden is just some guy. Right now, I am legally as president-elect as he is, and so are you. Now, at 4:30 p.m. on Election Day, the New York Times issued the following tweet, quote, "The role of declaring the winner of a presidential election falls to the news media. The broadcast networks and cable news outlets have vowed to be prudent. Here's how it will work." This isn't just incorrect, and it isn't just fraudulent. It's the declaration of a coup d'etat. The media does not select the president. The fact that the New York Times said such a thing means that millions and millions of people have come to believe that that's how things actually work. Now, you think I'm overstating the case when I say it's a coup? Think about it this way. What if he'd written, "The role of declaring the winner of a presidential election falls to the National Rifle Association. Now pay attention, because here's how it's going to go." The instant that George Stephanopoulos referred to Joe Biden as the president-elect, he was fraudulently asserting something that he knew not to be true. He knows full well that legal challenges have been made during this election. George Stephanopoulos knows exactly how things work because George Stephanopoulos ran Bill Clinton's successful 1992 campaign along with James Carville. And so when George Stephanopoulos refers to Joe Biden as the president-elect, George Stephanopoulos is lying. He is making a fraudulent statement, and that statement is intended to influence the result of the U.S. election in favor of his own political views, which again, do not need much clarification since he was and remains as close professionally and personally to Bill and Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party as it is possible to be. He is making that statement, president-elect, to psychologically lock you, me, and everyone else into believing something he knows to be untrue. He is fraudulently influencing an ongoing election. Putin and Xi would faint dead away if they had the kind of power that he has in order to influence who votes in this country and for whom. Now, the fact that any man with that much built-in bias is claiming to be an impartial journalist is also fraudulent. And for ABC to hire someone that biased in the first place is also incontrovertible evidence that their claim to be a member of a free and independent press is fraudulent as well. ABC is owned by Disney, and Disney now gets the bulk of its entertainment revenues from overseas. You know, overseas, where the virus that most certainly didn't come from Wuhan came from, that overseas. You know, it's a shame to have to skip Governor Noem's excellent reply to the COVID question, but we'll come back to COVID in a later installment. Right now, let's go 45 seconds into the interview.
Election Day needs to be fair, honest, and transparent, and we need to be sure that we had an honest election before we decide who gets to be in the White House the next 4 years.
Governor Noem, do you have any evidence that it wasn't an honest election? You had a tweet earlier this week saying it was rigged. Do you have any evidence at all of widespread fraud? I've spoken with Republican secretaries of state in Georgia. in Arizona. I've spoken to Republican officials across the country. They have come up with zero evidence of widespread fraud.
Here's a news flash for you, Anchorman. It's not the governor's job to prove to you and your news suppression agency that your assertion is correct. Finding out whether or not there was widespread voter fraud is your f***ing job, not hers. Forgive me and 70 million other people for asking, but since you are now demanding the governor provide the evidence that is your job to either confirm or deny by, actually going out and practicing some investigative journalism, then why in the hell should any of us believe a single word that comes out of your lying mouth? And that goes for all the rest of you hack stenographers working as the audiovisual department for the Democratic Party. In the first 1 minute and 33 seconds of one segment, you have already fraudulently declared that Joe Biden is president-elect, and you have also shown that you are not only unwilling and unable to do your job, you don't even know what that job is. Now, look at this lower third. Election officials, no widespread signs of fraud. Really? Which election officials? Reading that draws you to the inescapable conclusion that there is a small handful of official election officials who have sacrificed a goat in their scarlet robes and hoods in the forbidden temple of elections and rendered their ironclad verdict. Well, here's some news for you, ABC. There are many, many election officials who are indeed reporting widespread voter irregularities. That lower third constitutes voter fraud. It's a lie. And you watching at home didn't catch it. You believed it. Now, a non-fraudulent version of this statement would read, Democratic political strategist asserts that none of the politicians he allegedly spoke with believed that there were any signs of widespread voter fraud. This is the kind of fraud that had stolen the election from the American people long before November 3rd, 2020. In the first 93 seconds of a single interview, there are multiple fraudulent assertions and outright lies designed to influence the way you think, meaning they were designed to influence the way you vote. Now, here's the official tweet from ABC News promoting this interview. It reads in full, pressed by @George Stephanopoulos on whether she has any evidence to support President Trump's election claims, GOP North Dakota Governor Kristi Noem does not provide any evidence, but also refuses to acknowledge that Joe Biden as the apparent winner of the presidency.
They have come up with zero evidence of widespread fraud.
And that is not true. That is absolutely not true. People have signed legal documents, affidavits stating that they saw illegal activities. And that is why we need to have this conversation in court. The New York Times itself said that there were clerical errors. If you look at what happened in Michigan,
fraud, Governor, that's
that
very
we had
different.
computer glitches that changed Republican votes to Democrat votes. You look in Pennsylvania, dead people voted in Pennsylvania.
Let's assume that you're an American voter who didn't watch the interview, and all you saw was this tweet. It states that Governor Kristi Noem does not provide any evidence to support claims of voter fraud. That is false. That is a lie. That is a fraudulent statement intended to mislead the public. She provided numerous credible pieces of evidence before she was cut off by the miniature Democratic Party operative sitting on a stack of cushions pretending to be a journalist. Oh, and there's also this. She also refuses to acknowledge that Joe Biden as the apparent winner of the presidency. Well, that's grammatically nonsensical. And it also contains two fraudulent assertions. Also, the word presidency should be capitalized when referring to the chief executive of the United States. Oh, and one last tiny little factual error. GOP Governor Kristi Noem is not the governor of North Dakota. She's the governor of South Dakota. See what millions of dollars of resources and layers of fact checkers and editors are really worth? See their ironclad devotion to getting the story just exactly right? This isn't news. In fact, this is the opposite of news. This is selective news suppression in order to influence an ongoing election. It is information manipulation conducted with a level of criminal neglect and legal malfeasance so pervasive that in one single sentence, they managed to pack in one nonsensical grammatical error, a spelling error, and fraudulently contradict the actual statements made by the governor of a state they had just misidentified, who had sat in their studios only a few moments before, and they did all of that in one sentence. And obviously, it's not just ABC. The stolen election begins with political propaganda designed to influence people's votes under the fraudulent claim of being unbiased news. There is no free and fair press in this country, and there hasn't been for decades. All we have now are various editions of American Pravda. Starting now, messages like this one are going to be more suppressed than ever. George Soros has on record put $34 billion, that's $34,000 million, into destroying this republic, and that money has been dispersed largely by his son, seen here posing with some of their employees. You can't complain about losing the country if you're not willing to do anything about it. Please follow the link below to make a one-time donation at BillWhittle.com or to become a member. If you don't want to support me, that's fine. Support somebody else. But for God's sakes, do something before these partisan hacks and totalitarian liars gaslight every single one of us into thinking we must be crazy to have believed in all of that freedom nonsense. We'll see you in part 2.